Hi there. So here we were in our last video where we have created a separate handler and we use that with on click event with a button. And we touched upon what is a functional component and what is a stateful component and what is mean by stateless, which is actually a functional component. So let's start with the functional component, and that is our app component at the moment. This is a functional component. So what is a functional component? It is the most recommended component by React. You can check out its talks. And functional component is basically a JavaScript ECMAScript 6 function that returns a single React element. What I mean by that is we can see there is a return statement here, and we can see there is a one parent element that is being returned from this function. What if we want to return more than one component? What it will do, it will gives us an error, and if we hover over, it will say JSX expression must have one parent element. Okay, this is what I was saying. One parent element can be returned. In simple words, only one element can be returned from a functional component, and that one element can have further n number of childs and their subchilds. That doesn't matter. The main thing is only one element can be returned from a functional component. That was the first thing I want to share today. The second thing is, what if we want our design have more than one elements on the same level? What I mean by that, let's say we have a header on a page, we have a body or banner. Normally these are the different sections present on a standard website. We have body or content, and we have a footer. Right, normally these are the different elements present on a page, and as it may depends or change from design to design, but it may happen that all those different sections or elements present on the same level. Then what we will do, there is a solution for that given by ReactJs, which is if it's required we can do that, and we can wrap those elements inside a fragment. So there is another type available in ReactJs to support that, basically this concept to return, to support this concept that more than one element can be returned, and that is a logical element. So for that one we need to import fragment from React, and we can wrap all those elements inside fragment like this. Now more than one element can be placed inside a single component or a function. So that is the second thing I wanted to discuss today. Yeah, and before that, why not let's give it a try and run this once. So for that one I will go to the solution and hit cmd, and I will type npm start. And to enhance the visibility, we can minimize that section from here and can check if we have that preview extension. No, not at the moment. At some point, we will install that preview extension as well. And that's very helpful to view the changes on the same screen. In fact, on the same Visual Studio Code. So the first time it may take some time. That is fine. Let me place that browser alongside Visual Studio Code just to make sure that we have the visibility of both screens, so we can see that the view is rendered and there is no issue, and we can add some text here as well, and both of those elements can be rendered on the view with this fragment, and there is a shortcut for that as well. So if we don't want to use fragment a complete word, we have a shortcut for that as well, and that is this empty angle brackets, and we can use the empty angle brackets with slash inside. So that was another thing for today. Next thing is these functional component can be normal function as well. That is how currently it's implemented, and it could be an arrow function as well. And if we want to convert this function to arrow function, we need to use const app like this, and we can just use arrow here, and that will make this function an arrow function, and the output will be same. No change will be on the UI side. So a function could be a normal function or arrow function as well. That was the next thing. Now another very important concept, which is props, and basically we are discussing all those very basic and required concepts before we jump jump into the complexities like state management, routing, libraries, packages, and things like that. Before that, we want to grasp the basic concepts of ReactJS. And that is another very important concept that is called props, and props is a shortcut of properties. These are nothing, just the properties. So when component calls another component and that component needs some properties, we call them props, right? So if we now look into this application from props point of view, we can see this is a app.js component, and we can also expand this one here, and we can also go to the index.js from where that is been called. So that is the app component is called from this main component, right? So concept is, what if we want this text to be controlled by this parent component? So this is a very basic example I'm giving just from the understanding perspective. So we don't want to hard code this text here. We want this to be passed by the parent component. So what we will do, we need to pass a property from here, right? And we can name that property whatever we want. Let's say we can name it header, or heading is equal to something like this, and we can pass a string, you are a child, right? And we can pick this from here. Now jump back to the child component. Why I'm saying this a child component is because this has been called from this component. In that scenario, index.js is a parent and app.js is a child component. And we already have learned that a functional component inside React is a function which accepts props, a single argument, and returns a single element. So prop is always there if we type or not. So to utilize those props, we need to pass the props here. We can name it whatever we want. Whatever is passed from there will be received inside that variable. So we can name it props, and instead of hard coding that text here, we can simply pass that variable here, and we know that anything we will be passing from here, from the parent component to this child component as an attribute, will be received directly inside props variable. And with props variable, we can just put a dot and we can use that variable name here. So let me save this, and also you can see page has been updated, you are a child. And that is simple as it is. Whatever we will pass from the one component, and that will be parent component most of the time, and that can be received through a variable to the child component which is called props. Next thing is we can destruct the props here, and we can discuss this destruction mechanism separately in a separate video, but that variable can be written in this way, and we can destruct all those properties like this inside curly braces, and we can directly utilize those variables. And that convention, that way, is very useful in my opinion, because we know that what is coming from the parent component. If we write the props for every time we want to utilize something, or any other team member want to work on the child component, he has to go back to the parent component to see what are getting passed from there, and he then go back and utilize that on its child component. Although there is another way to validate those props, and we will discuss props validation in one of our coming videos as well, but the best approach is to destruct your props in the arguments list like this, and we can pass as many properties, and we can receive all those properties here separated by comma, and we can directly utilize inside the child component. So that was all for this video. We have discussed a couple of concepts. Let me revise all of those. First thing first, what are the functional components, and what are those from React point of view? The second thing we discussed, to return more than one element from a functional component, and the required support we have from ReactJS framework, which is through fragments. Third thing we discussed, the props. What are the props? Why we are using those props in React.js, and what is the destruction of object when we are receiving those props in the child component. And the last thing was the functional component component can be written as a function, a conventional function, as well as the arrow function as well. So ReactJS supports both types of functions. We can use whatever approach we want, but in my experience and my opinion, we should be using arrow functions. There are a lot of benefits of using arrow functions, and I will be explaining those benefits in my coming videos. But one of the most important benefit is the auto binding when we are using those arrow functions as handlers to our elements, like the click event we implemented in our last video. That was all for this video. I hope that video is useful and you are now a bit more comfortable with React.js. In case of any questions or queries, do ask me in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.